I'm currently USG's inventory director. I'm tasked with managing nearly $1 million in internal USG and Tier 2 inventory. And that's through annual audits, inventory reporting, and working with UConn's surplus department. It's safe to say that I've seen my fair share of USG spreadsheets, especially in the Comptroller's office. I work under the Office of the Comptroller, and I've grown increasingly familiar with the duties of the Comptroller, which is part of why I've chosen to run for this position. As well as outside of USG, I am a member of the RHA board. RHA stands for Residence Hall Association. I'm also an active member of UConn Page to Stage, which is a theater organization, so this is not the first time I've performed on this stage. So within Residence Hall Association, just to give you a bit of background about what I do, I serve as the National Communications Coordinator. My job entails attending several conferences throughout the year with many different representatives from universities across North America to vote on legislation that impacts the residence halls, specifically here at UConn. So I'm very familiar with advocating on behalf of students. So just a little bit about why I decided to run for this position. Like I mentioned, I do have some experience within this office. I've been working as an inventory director for just about a year now. I've heard the conversations that have gone on within this office. I know what we're working on. I know the initiatives that we're planning and what we're planning to get into within the Comptroller's office. And I feel as though I'm prepared for a greater challenge within USG, and I'm really excited to serve students in a greater capacity within USG. I'm excited to pursue current initiatives that we've been working on, such as the professional clothing closet, if anyone's familiar, and I'm excited to begin new ones as well. Ultimately, my campaign, I'm running on transparency. I'm not a copy and paste of the current Comptroller. Sydney has been a fantastic supervisor, and I speak not just for myself when I say that this organization thanks her. But that said, it is imperative that this organization experiences turnover. And I'm very excited to provide a fresh take on the Office of the Comptroller. In answering your questions tonight, I hope to touch upon some policy initiatives that I'm interested in implementing, such as allocating more of the budget towards Tier 2 funding, expanding the Office of the Chief Diversity Officer's budget, restructuring the Comptroller's office to improve its efficiency, having greater financial and informational transparency within the Office of the Comptroller, and ensuring that our Senate committees feel supported. So tonight I'm hoping to touch on that, and that tonight you'll get to hear a little bit more about me and get to know me as a candidate so that I can serve you better as USG's Comptroller. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy, for your opening statement. We will now move on to the question portion. For the first question, USG has a limited budget, but many student organizations need funding. How would you decide where money goes when demand is higher than what's available? And whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so one of the biggest issues I think that's facing the Office of the Comptroller is the accessibility of information regarding Tier 2 funding. There are many organizations that would like USG funding, but Tier 2 organizations are unaware of our funding policies, and they're therefore unable to obtain that funding. It is our obligation as an office to ensure that organizations are knowledgeable of our policies, since it is student fees that fund us. We serve you, it is your money, you are entitled to that money. We have an equitable funding system on paper, but if we are not able to properly make our resources available via dissemination of policy information, it's no longer equitable when the same 30 organizations are requesting funding, and the rest of our Tier 2 organizations are left to the wayside. So I would say that in an attempt to make our funding policies and our Tier 2 funding more equitable so that we can divide the wealth, I would want to increase more information and information accessibility so that we can share our budget rather than getting into the same 30 organizations.
Thank you, Billy. Now moving on to the next question. A lot of student organizations struggle with confusing or delayed funding. What would you do to make the Tier 2 funding process easier and faster?
Well, I think I touched upon that a little bit with that last question. But like I said, I think getting that information out there and disseminating that information in an accessible way via our website, via our Instagram, all those ways is really important so that we can divide that wealth. I also am interested in potentially exploring having more in-person Tier 2 funding training and information sessions. so that our organizations are better equipped, especially when their e-boards or their treasurers are first-year students or students that have never been on an e-board position for a Tier 2 organization, so that they are best equipped with the policies and best equipped with the information so that they too can receive the funding that they're entitled to.
Thank you, Billy. Moving on to the next question. The Student Senate has to approve the USG budget. How would you make sure senators actually understand what they're voting on and make informed decisions?
Yes, so our budget on paper is pretty easy to read, sort of. But obviously, I'd be attending Senate, I'd be explaining the budget. I would ensure that if senators have any questions, if they have any concerns about the budget, that their voices are heard as they are the representatives of our student body. I also plan to make a few proposed changes to our budgets that it is more accessible and easier to read. I think it's important that we get rid of some of these line items that are undefined and give more flexibility in the way that our offices can use their budget rather than trying to divide, say, a $50,000 budget into 10 different line items, and then we're trying to move those things around throughout the course of the year. So making our budget more flexible, I think, will in turn make senators more knowledgeable and aware and feel that our budget is easier to read so that they can approve something that they truly understand.
Yes. Thank you, and now we will move on to some student questions. What is your opinion on the recent Senate decision to give Nutmeg Yearbooks $100,000 to reset their printing timeline? What is your plan if they return asking for more money?
I think it is USG's obligation to serve the student body in the best way possible. And if that, via finances, being dispersed to other Tier 3 organizations that provide great resources and can impact many students at one time, I think that's an okay thing for the USG to do. I think it was a line item on our budget. It was a part of our budget that needed to be used. We have to use our funds by the end of the year. That's important. And I think if we can, for those who aren't knowledgeable about what that MOU is, by the way, to my knowledge, it was a $100,000 MOU to aid in funding for the yearbook that UConn creates via the Nutmeg Tier 3 student organization. What was I saying? But yes, that money is going towards, again, to my knowledge, 5,000 yearbooks that can be donated to our seniors that are graduating for free. And I think that USG being able to be a part of such a huge campus-wide impact that impacts 5,000 students at once is a really great thing. And if it's a part of our budget that wasn't being used and can now be used effectively, I think that's an okay thing. And if they were to return asking for more money, I think that's a conversation that we have to have in that moment. I'd be open to having a conversation with Nutmeg, as well as the other elected representatives within USG. But yeah, I think our MOU was a good decision.
Thank you, Billy. Moving on to our next question. I think you touched on this a little bit in your opening statement, but how will you be different from the past comptroller?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think organizationally and structurally that I want to talk about is my mission and goal to be more of a delegator as a comptroller. Cindy did a fantastic job. I see you're laughing over there. But Cindy did a fantastic job, a phenomenal job as our comptroller. But Cindy and I are different in a lot of ways. I have some proposed ideas about restructuring the comptroller's office that I'd be happy to share with you. I want to make the deputy comptroller within the comptroller's office a true deputy so that we can delegate more tasks, we can have greater office reporting, we can get more things done. As a comptroller, I don't want to be bogged down with endless amounts of paperwork. Not to say that I don't want to do my job, but I want to be in as many places as I can at once. I want to be able to advocate for students. I want to hear from those students. And if I can't do that because I'm bogged down with paperwork or et cetera, then I'm not doing my job. So apart from Sydney, again, Sydney did a wonderful job, but I, as a comptroller, am going to make the Office of Comptroller a better team effort. I want to be able to delegate, I want people to have clear delineations of what their objectives and responsibilities are, and I want to be a comptroller that interacts with the student body even more.
Thank you. And for our last question, what initiatives are you looking to implement ASAP?
Initiatives ASAP. So one thing that I'm really interested in looking at is increasing our Tier 2 funding budget line item. Currently, so at the beginning of this fiscal year, Tier 2 funding began with a little under $1 million. That has since been increased to, I believe, $1,050,000. It is, or $1,050,000, thank you. It is my hope that starting next fiscal year, we can begin the year with $1.1 million in Tier 2 funding by shrinking and growing different aspects of our line items in our budget. Because it's my opinion that if we have to keep bumping funding towards Tier 2 funding, moving it from place to place, we're not using our budget effectively, and the places that we're finding that money in should not have that money in the first place. Another thing that I'm really interested in implementing is the increasing the Office of the Chief Diversity Officer's budget. They began the fiscal year with $40,000 towards their line item of outreach events and collaborations. That was then bumped up to $131,000. This actually very recently. This is something that I want to maintain or even increase even further. These events are events that are incredibly impactful for students, like the Nutmeg MOU. They can impact a great number of students all at once, and at relatively low cost. So those are just a few of the policies and implementations that I'd love to start on day one.
Thank you both for your responses. You will now be allowed a 5-minute closing statement whenever you're ready.
All right, wonderful. So as you've heard throughout this Q&A session, I'm deeply committed to serving the student body in the management of their finances within USG. I've talked about my policy stances. You'll hear from me more via my campaign. But I am devoted to the student body, and I would encourage students to vote, even in an uncontested election. Because your finances, your student fees, that is what funds us. That is what's part of making the decisions. That is how we as USG can serve you via what you give to us. And it is our responsibility to use those funds correctly. Because you pay a lot to go here, as many of the candidates have mentioned already, you pay a lot to go here. And I want to ensure that our money is being put to good use that is for the student body, not for us. So again, I thank everyone for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Billy, for your closing statement, and that concludes the comptroller portion of the debate. We will now have a brief recess, another 10-minute recess, before moving on to the debate for vice president and president positions.